Final buzzer. This is where you come for instant post-game reaction.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is Dubs OT.
Can't wait.
With John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
And then it's Key. Misses the layup.
Goodness.
Boy, Dylan Brooks and Spencer mixing it up underneath it. Now Spencer and Şengün. Boy, look out. Jackson Davis shoving Şengün. Officials quickly trying to defuse the situation. That thing was brewing. It started between Spencer and Brooks. Then Spencer started jawing with Şengün. Jackson Davis came to Spencer's defense. And so the officials, no doubt, will go to the replay monitor here.
And they would go to the replay monitor, and Pat Spencer would get ejected. Alperen Şengün and Trace Jackson Davis, each with technical fouls in what wound up being a fiery fourth quarter inside Toyota Center as the Warriors lose this one to the Rockets. Game 5 goes Houston's way, 131-116, the final. We welcome you in. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. I don't mean to necessarily have the joyous tone here off the top, but the Warriors, what the Warriors bench guys did in the fourth quarter, I think relights the candle for what this series has been all about, which is the competitive back and forth and the physical exchanges and a couple of teams that don't like each other. I mean, for Pat Spencer to throw down Dylan Brooks and then Şengün step to TJD, who looked at first glance like he was going to pop him one. And I think, when you look at, and we'll start with the fourth quarter first, the theme of the fourth quarter was the Warriors bench guys being competitive enough against the Rockets starters, by the way, to make them have to play the game out to a point where they were in the game up until about 2 minutes to go. But everything that happened in that quarter and in that exchange that we just mentioned, I think has a reinvigorating effect on a night where the Warriors basically, as much as a team can punt on an NBA playoff game, it felt like the Warriors punted on an NBA playoff game, Game 5, up 3-1. The one game they have to play with, and as we often say, if you give the Warriors a game to play with, they will play with it. And they did tonight, getting down big, getting down by as many as 31 after leading 8-5. The Rockets scored 40 in the first quarter, 40-24 after one. They were up 27 at the half in this one. And then the Rockets just pouring it on throughout the night. Steve Kerr pulled his starters middle of the third quarter. And at that point, it wound up just being a night where it was about maintenance, and it was about those guys not being able, trying to get as much rest as they could, potentially for a game on Friday at Chase Center, and try to, fight and scratch and claw as much as you can to make the Rockets starters work in a game where they had a lot of guys play really, really well. And that's the one thing as we start to shift toward Game 6 that I think we're going to get some answers as to whether this game was an extension of a bunch of different chunks of Game 4, where it looked like the Rockets were growing more and more comfortable against the Warriors' defense and the ability to score and put up points. Now, the Warriors dominated the clutch moments of the game in Game 4, and it allowed them to prevail on a night where Jimmy Butler and Brandon Podziemski did their thing. But we're going to get questions answered here as to did the Rockets, have they really figured some things out that can apply to them having a legitimate chance to maybe win this series? Or was tonight kind of a one-off, a lot like Game 5 of the second round of the playoffs was back in 2022 when the Warriors went into Memphis in this same situation, and the only other time that the Warriors in the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green era were in this exact position on the road up 3-1, and they got blasted by the Grizzlies, 134-95. And then 2 nights later, they were back at Chase Center, and they were able to close out the series and win it in 6 games. And at that point, move on to the Western Conference Finals en route to an NBA championship. So we'll leave the high end of that comp at the door, but I think the Game 5 from 3 years ago comp in the second round is definitely one that everybody's going to have on their mind. But you got to give the Rockets credit for playing well. Again, the Warriors really, I didn't think they just weren't competitive. And I know there's a lot of people in the Bay that are going to be talking about the officiating. Like, tonight was not about the officiating. The first quarter was not about the officiating. Yes, the Rockets shot 13 free throws. Yes, they got called for 3 fouls, but the Warriors weren't aggressive. They weren't really attempting to try to do anything to where fouls were going to be called, let alone shooting fouls. And the Rockets were desperate. I mean, their season's on the line. If they come out and they don't play with energy and they let the Warriors hang around in this game, then they might be going home right now. And 1, 2, 3 Cancun and all of that. But the Rockets did not have that energy, and I don't think anybody who's watched the Rockets play this year would think that they would remotely have that energy, because that's not what Ime Udoka is about, and that's not what a lot of these young players and some of the veterans that are peppered in for the Rockets. I know the Bay, everybody hates them, and that's fine, and villains and Dylan Brooks and all that. Like, I get it. But they came to play tonight, and the Warriors came like they had a game to play with, and you mix those things together, and it turns into a 131-116 blowout victory in favor of the Houston Rockets. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open at 415-808-KNBR, as is the phone lines. They are open as well. You can give Kyle Haar a call, 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627. We appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well here as we get this thing going on this Wednesday night. We'll obviously keep everybody updated on what's going on with the Timberwolves and the Lakers and the potential for the next round. But tonight's not even about the next round. Tonight's about what went wrong, how much of it is the Rockets finding some things that they can do against the Warriors that translate to a Game 6, if at all, and how much the Warriors basically, as they did 3 years ago, and an even older team now than they were then, saying, you know what, y'all can have this one because we need to make sure the energy's up for Friday night, because Friday night truly is the night for the Warriors to close out the series. They do not want to come back here and have to play a game again on Sunday, because the last 2 games, let's just be honest, the Rockets have smoked them in the last 2 games in Toyota Center. And we've talked a lot about the Rockets and their youth and their energy and their athleticism. And as this series continues to go every other day, an older team has the potential to get to a point where they run out of gas. And so I think the Warriors were, once it got bad, and Steve Kerr played the starters for about the first half of the third quarter, but once it got bad, he called off the dogs and let this one go. And you give some credit to the Warriors bench guys for fighting, I think, in this game and not backing down. And again, I think that kind of relights the candle as to Game 6. And Chase is going to be lit. I mean, there's no question. Chase Center is going to be lit on Friday night. And again, when you go all in for the one shot at home, you best not miss. That's the one thing I will say. And I know, again, Warrior fans and in the Bay, you feel like the Warriors are the better team, and they have been to this point by a little bit in this series. But if you go all in on a Game 6 and you don't get it, you could very well wind up in a little bit of trouble in a Game 7 if this thing has to come back to Toyota Center on what could be even a quicker turnaround from the turnaround that we just saw. And you talk about an early tip here, that game could be an afternoon game on Sunday if it comes to that, with the Warriors having to play late into the night Friday, maybe as late as 9:30, 10 o'clock with all the fouls and physicality and reviews. Let's go to the monitor. That game might end at 10 o'clock Pacific time and then you're playing at 2:30 Central Time, 12:30 Pacific, flying halfway across the country to have to play a Game 7. So all eggs must be in for the Warriors to be sure as they set their sights on Game 6 at Chase on Friday night. All right, some more thoughts on this one. And again, I don't think there are a whole hell of a lot of strategic takeaways, really, in this game. I did make the note early, the Warriors had the 8-5 lead, and it looked like both teams were comfortable and continuing to get more comfortable with the shots that they're getting against each other's defenses as the series has gone on. The Warriors did get in the penalty in the first 4 minutes and 16 seconds of the quarter. Rockets hit 13 of 13 from the free throw line in the first quarter after the Warriors were up 8-5. It was 20-8 at the 7-minute mark, a 15-0 run. The Rockets again went to the Şengün, Steven Adams playing some zone defense behind it. That gave the Warriors problems, and the Rockets were really having their way getting to the line. They were hitting threes early. This is the second straight game where the Rockets have been able to knock down the three ball at a much higher clip than they had in the first 3 games of this series. And it was another Van Vliet game where he hit a 4 of 6. Dylan Brooks hit a couple. Jalen Green hit a couple. And the Rockets are up 40-24 after 1. Warriors didn't attempt a free throw. Rockets also, as I mentioned, 5 of 9 from 3. Just a lifeless start in a closeout game for the Warriors, which I found to be surprising. Again, when the game gets away, and we'll hear from Steve Kerr, who mentioned it on the TNT broadcast, the fact that he was going to have to see how the game goes and almost relayed to them that there could be some potential for him to call it off if it got out of hand, as we've seen the Warriors do. But they just didn't have it. They just did not have it. And, I thought I'm not going to call it gutless. I know a bunch of people had said that in the chat, gutless. I think maybe the Warriors bench guys and that group, I do think they deserve a nod. The Pat Spencer, Moses Moody, Braxton Key, Kevin Knox, TJD, Trace Jackson Davis lineup. They showed a lot of fight, and if they could have made a couple of layups, it might have actually been a single-digit game. Oh, my God, I sound like Fitz. It might have been, Gene McIntyre, if Key had a finish package, it could have gotten interesting. Yeah, if he had made a couple layups, it might have been like a 7-point game with like 6 minutes left. And then you've got Steve Kerr saying, hey, do I go back to Curry? Do I go back to Draymond? Like what do I do? 8-3-1. Pat Spencer stays in that game. JD, please finish that sentence. Thank you. Like what? I mean, same kind of thing. And then you've got Spencer again showing that he wanted the smoke. Apollo Crews, Pat didn't get the memo they were giving up. Well, it was all the regulars. It was the guys who aren't in the rotation that got the memo. The Braxton Keys and the Pat Spencers and TJDs were not about that life. And again, they almost made it really uncomfortable for the Rockets down the stretch there. I think they did make it uncomfortable, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Ime Udoka wanted his starters, I think, on the bench about 8 minutes to go, and it took all the way to the 2-minute mark. And Şengün, the Rockets at times are ill-composed enough to where, and I always think about this, in the moment in which the Warriors are basically playing the back 5 players on their roster, plus Moody. Moody's obviously been a starter in a higher part of the rotation, but they're playing guys at the back end of their roster. The Rockets are playing their starters. And the Rockets at times truly are, not composed enough to where you're thinking, could one of the Warrior bench players actually get one of the Rockets starters to do something that might get them ejected or potentially suspended? Ejected doesn't count, but potentially suspended for another game. And there was about a 4-minute stretch where it felt like something might jump off in that vein. And then you've got Pat Spencer throwing Dylan Brooks to the ground. You've got Şengün coming over to take up for his teammate, and then TJD stepping in there, and Spencer with the ejection. But it all adds up, nevertheless, to the Rockets getting the 131 to 116 win. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. 925 on the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Rockets spent it all tonight. I don't know about that. Again, they've had enough in the tank the last couple of games. I don't think the Rockets are running out of gas. That's the one thing. I think the Warriors are going to have to put it on them. 408, JD, do you feel like Friday is essentially a must-win for the Warriors at this point? I do. I would never count out the Warriors with Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr in a Game 7. I would never count them out. I would never count out playoff Jimmy Butler in a must-win Game 7. I think you'd have to see how Game 6 plays out. And just, do they get blown out? Do they, what are the minute totals? I think it's hard to believe that the Warriors would get blown out at home in a Game 6. But I think it also depends on what time the game is in Game 7. And the Warriors don't want to find out. And I saw that the Timberwolves had the early lead on the Rockets, or on the Lakers rather. Let me get a quick check of that one here on the scoreboard. Yeah, Minnesota's up 21-9 in the first 5 minutes down at Crypto.com Arena. So the Timberwolves could be moving on here. They're off to a great start in that one down in Southern California. But yeah, I mean, it that game could be a quick turnaround, as I mentioned. And so must win. I think it's fair to call it essentially a must win, because you're talking about another cross-country flight halfway across the country tonight. The Warriors are heading back tonight with the 1 day off in between games. They're going to get back tonight late. They're going to sleep all day and then have a meeting tomorrow late in the afternoon. And we'll see if they have a shoot around on Friday or what the deal is as far as that goes heading toward Friday. Maybe they have a late guys can come in Friday and they do a little walkthrough, something like that. But they're intent on getting home as quickly as they possibly can, get the rest tomorrow and try to get as much rest as they can, and then play the thing out on Friday. But you'd be talking about halfway across the country tonight and then right back halfway across the country early Saturday morning with likely, again, what I think would be a 2:30 Central Time tip. So must win. It's a just win, says the 925. I think that's well said for the Warriors here in this one. So we'll have to see. 808 KNBR, we got a couple of lines open, 415-808-5627, as the Warriors lose this one 131-116 in Houston to the Rockets. Give me your big takeaways from this game. Is it a one-off? Is it truly a one-off? Or are there some things that the Rockets are starting to do in the last couple of games of this series, really Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5, that make you think that closing them out, even at Chase Center on Friday night, isn't going to be an easy task? Because I do think that it could be another one of those games, kind of like Game 4, where you have opportunities to get out to a lead. If you don't, or the Rockets withstand it, you're having to try and just fight the whole game and execute down the stretch. I think that is the big advantage for the Warriors in this series, is they are the better clutch team. I think the Rockets almost have to put this series and individual games in this series at a point where it isn't about late game execution. It isn't about who the better team is in the clutch, because the Rockets have struggled in those situations. The Warriors have been really good in those situations post Jimmy Butler trade, and we've seen it. Game 1 looked like it was going to be a blowout in the Warriors' favor. The Rockets with the furious comeback in that one, but the Warriors do enough execution-wise in Game 1 to win it. Game 2, a blowout in favor of the Rockets. They win comfortably after the Jimmy Butler injury, and let's be honest, they were kind of on their way even before the Jimmy Butler injury, although the Warriors, I do think, we're going to have an opportunity to settle that game down like they did in Game 1. But then the close games have gone the Warriors' way in not only Game 3, but Game 4 right down into the end because of the stars. And that is the other advantage that the Warriors have in this series as you look at it through, when you were coming into the series, through 5 games in the series. I mean, the Warriors have 2 proven stars. The Rockets have 0 proven stars in terms of playoff acumen and the inexperience versus experience and all of that. But where the Rockets have an advantage is youth, athleticism, energy, the ability to continue to play if the series reaches a point of 6 and 7 games, I think specifically. And here we are. So those two teams, or those two things, I think officially here come to a head. And we'll get the answers as it relates to how this thing is going to play out coming up here on Friday night. So 808 KNBR, let's get George in San Francisco up here on Dubs OT with JD on the Sports Leader. What's going on tonight, George? George, are you there?
John, I'm
Hello,
here.
George. Hey, George, what's going on, my man?
All's good. Hey, so look at Warriors and Rockets both have to fly. It's not like the Warriors the only ones got to travel, right?
That's true, but the Rockets are younger, a lot younger in the key areas. But that is a fair point.
And so travel shouldn't really matter. What do playoffs generally come down to, as we tend to agree, is experience not valuable?
Experience is extremely valuable. That is one of the Warriors' advantages in this series: experience and star player experience.
Right. So I think we can agree on that, and that I think creates the big home court and an overall advantage for the Warriors in Game 6. So I think we could all say that this leaned to the Warriors' favor. Vegas saw it. We're minus 200 going into this. 6 games was as it should be, and that's what it's going to shape up to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's the way a lot of people are feeling tonight. That you look at this game at the beginning of it, and it was going to be, the Rockets were going to be desperate. The Rockets were getting the calls early in the game, but they were earning those calls. They were playing well, and it's a game the Warriors didn't need. And it's really the one game, and they're really the second game in the series of the 2 games the Rockets have won are the 2 games you could characterize as the games that the Warriors didn't need. And the Warriors have been able to get the other 3. And yeah, I mean, George, to be honest, I said Warriors in 6 at the beginning, and that may very well be how it shakes out. And it still is, I think, how it's trending. But again, when you come out and don't have it at the level that the Warriors didn't have it tonight, either by design or because it was just the way that it worked out, your margin for error is up. and I think that's something that, again, I know a lot of Warrior fans are feeling pretty comfortable about it, but it's not just it's not a lock that they're just going to come out and automatically play a great game and be up 15 points with 3 minutes to go and be cruising and laughing and dancing on the Rockets' grave as they go home in beating them here again for this version of the Rockets, new version of the Rockets, for what, the 5th time it would be in basically a decade. But the first with this group, obviously. So again, sometimes I think it's a little easier said than done. But no, overall, I think the Warriors, if you had told them at the beginning of the series, up 3-2 going back home, you'd sign up for that every day of the week.
And would you bet against the Warriors in a Game 7 if they had to go back to Houston?
I mean, I would not. I would not bet against them.
Okay.
But again, but again, George, it's not 2017. Like, it's not 2018. And I'm telling you, all these games that the Warriors have had to play and all the games they've had to play extremely hard to win in February and March and April to get to the point where they're having this Game 6 and potentially a Game 7 if they can't win on Friday night, they have taken a toll. And at some point, all of those games and the age and the attrition and, yes, even the travel, George, at some point, that could prove to be too much for them. Whether you want to bet against them or not, I don't think anybody's betting against them at this point. It's just reality. I mean, it is what it is.
Could you also not make the counter argument that it does have value for players like Pods and Post and Moody, et cetera.
No question. No question.
In fact, that could serve us better in the long run. Maybe not this year, but in the long run. I mean, Steph's not leaving after this year. Jimmy's not leaving after this year.
No question. And you could make the case, George, that part's absolutely true. And thank you for the call. That part's absolutely true. Regardless of what ends up happening, I mean, the experience for the younger players, that's true. But let's be honest, the Warriors' window to win a title is and I don't think they're going to win a title this year. I really don't. Because I think the path and all the extra games and being the 7 seed and having to win all those games to even be the 7 seed, I think this roster also is at a point where, can they win Friday? Yes. Can they win Sunday if they don't win Friday? Sure. Can they win another round? I think they probably can. But again, at some point, if the attrition and all the battles they went through put them in a position where they don't have enough left in the tank, I don't think that's a crazy statement. It would still benefit the young. Getting in's always better than not. I mean, you're not going to hear me ever say that. But the window to win a title is basically next year. And so, I mean, it's not like they've got 2, 3, 4 more shots at this thing. But yes, the playoff experience, and I think the other part of it is going to be, how much do you have to augment the roster in the offseason to really go all in to try to win it next year if you can't this year. It's 100% fair to say that next year would be a better opportunity than this year, but this year's a hell of an opportunity. And I'll say this to George and to everybody out there, if the Warriors lose this series, and look, nobody's saying they're going to. I'm just posing the question. Like, the Rockets have been playing – the Rockets are – I know in the Bay it's like the Rockets are a bunch of chumps and this and that, and they can't hold the Warriors' jock and all that. The Rockets have played much better Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5, and really even Game 2. Game 2, Game 3, Game 4, Game 5. Like, they've played much better than – to be perfectly honest, I would have expected them to be able to play in this series. And so – what I'm getting at is they're capable of winning if the Warriors don't play well. The Warriors have to play well to beat them. And you could say, JD, Steph didn't have a great game in Game 4. Well, Jimmy Butler did. Brandon Podziemski did. Buddy Hield did. Same thing in Game 3. Steph Curry did. GP2 did. Buddy Hield did. Yeah, that's the game that may wind up being the turning point in this series. But I'm just going to say it. If they lose this series, it's a major disappointment. You lose this series to this team with the experience level and the 3-1 lead, that's a major disappointment whether this team has the ability to go on and win a title or not. All right, that guy in Oakland next here on Dubs OT. What's going on, that guy?
JD, my guy, what is happening, brother? I haven't called you since you were on your new dig. Remember me?
Appreciate you. Of course I do. Appreciate you coming over.
I've been over. I've been listening to you. I
know. Oh, I know you've been over for a year and a half. I know that.
Yeah, you know that. And I hear you every night at the brewery after the post game. So I
love
listen.
it.
So here's the thing, brother. And I let me agree with you to something, and then I got to make my point because I always come hard with it. I agree with you. I gave the Warriors, when they signed Jimmy Butler, I gave the Warriors 2 series and out this year because I just knew they didn't have enough to get over the hump of the conference finals and the big dance. But I did give them 2. And so I'm rolling with that. They got to win this series, and then they got to beat the Wolves probably next, which leads me into my next rant here. Now, you remember OKC, and you remember Cleveland, of course, back in the day. So my point here is a lot of this is on the coaches and on the veterans because I'm a season ticket holder and I did not anticipate going to the Friday night game because of the history that we have. We were down 3-1 and we were up 3-1 in the same postseason. And we had both sides of that coin. So, when you got someone down, you got to stand on their throat. If you're going to win the heavyweight fight and it's the 8th round and you can knock them out, why don't you just knock them out? Don't wait for the decision in the 10th. You know what I'm saying? So
I'm with you.
I put a lot of this on the coaching staff not having their guys ready for the Category 5 hurricane that was going to happen in Houston tonight. This is on the coaching staff. This is on the veterans, where they were down by 14. It looks like they're already laying down. I mean, if any of the reporters going to have the cojones in that conference to say, hey, Steve, hey, Draymond, hey, Steph, why did you waste our money going to Thrive City tonight if you were just going to wave the towel? Why even go to Houston? You should have forfeited the game and got ready for Friday night. That's how upset I am. Because when you let someone in, they got life now. Houston thinks that they can win this series, and rightfully so. And so this is all on the Dubs for not being prepared for what was going to happen tonight. What's your take on that, JD? Hey, I appreciate talking to you again, and you take care, brother.
I did not expect such a soft tap out from the Warriors regulars. I didn't, and thank you, that guy. Appreciate it. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Got a couple of lines open. I did not expect the Warriors to tap out as quickly as they did with the main guys. I really did not anticipate that, and I think it again. All I could think about all day was the Game 5 in Memphis, and we talked about it a little bit. I filled in for Greg Silver with Greg Papa earlier today, and I mentioned it. And Greg was quick to say, "Well, that was round 2, and they had already won in 5, and won. Ended up winning the next one in 5. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, only and it's not on the coaching staff. I think the truth is, if you are mad about the way the Warriors came out and didn't really go for the game tonight at the beginning, if you're mad about it, it's Steve and it's Steph and it's Draymond and it's Jimmy. Like, those are the guys. Like, be mad at them, because there's nothing that, like, this is not, Steve saying, I'm going to let them do whatever they want. Like, there was, I think, a calculated assessment of, if this game gets a little out of hand early, do you just let it go? And sometimes that happens in the playoffs. We talked about it in the Lakers-Warriors series, too, from 2 years ago. The Lakers got Game 1, kind of let Game 2 go at Chase. Made sure they got Game 3 and Game 4 at home, let Game 5 go at Chase, and then made sure they got Game 6 to close out the series. A lot of playoff series play out the way that this playoff series has played out to this point. It's nothing to fear. It's just the debate that this series is founded on, which is the Warriors' experience, the Warriors' star power versus the Rockets' youth and exuberance and physicality, and the Warriors have physicality too, and the nature of the schedule. The thing that gives the Rockets a chance to win in this series is every other day, and potentially having to come back here for a Sunday afternoon game after playing late on Friday night, and the fact that they may have enough in the tank from a physical standpoint to where they play an athletic style of game anyway. They score by rebounding. They score by transition. They score in ways that don't lack as much skill as the ways that the Warriors do. So playing harder, having more juice, energy, all those things are natural for the Rockets. So if you take a little bit off the top of what the Warriors have, because they're a little bit of an older team, and it starts to impact execution. The Rockets don't have to execute as well, because the Rockets don't execute as well. But if you don't have to, if you level the playing field in that vein, then they can win kind of playing the way that they've played. That's why this thing is, again, not at a full-blown danger point. Go home, hold home court, win Game 6, and that's it. And this will go down as a warm finale for the Rockets fans at Toyota Center, and what proved to be their final home game of the season. Like, that could still be the way it plays out, and then the Warriors go on to whoever they play next, whether it's Minnesota or the Lakers, and you figure out the next series at that point. Like, this team is just not. They're not good enough on the one hand to be able to just put all their eggs, I feel like, in one basket. But on the other hand, I also think they probably aren't good enough or aren't physically there enough to be able to go all in. I said this the other night. I talked to a few people about it today. I think the worst case scenario for the Warriors tonight is not actually what happened, but it's if they had played their starters 40-plus minutes and lost by 1 in another game like Game 4, Game 3, or Game 1. To me, that would have been, because then there's even less left in the cup to go back home and fight, and then the Rockets are really juiced because they finally won a close game against the Warriors. That's still something the Rockets have doubt in my mind. And as bad as the effort was tonight for the Warriors early, and as much as they quit on the game quickly, the execution was just brutal as well, and that's going to be something that they're going to have to overcome here moving forward if they're going to close this thing out on Friday night and move on to whatever is going to come up next. All right, let's do a couple of Kyle's clicks. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Kyle, we'll make sure we get everything in that we need to here in the 7 o'clock hour. So if you can let me know the hard out for that, I'll make sure I hit that hard out here at the end of the 7 o'clock hour. We'll keep this thing going all the way until 9. Are you upset by the way the Warriors didn't go for it harder tonight? Is it just the nature of a normal series? What did you think of Pat Spencer mixing it up with Dylan Brooks and TJD and Şengün? I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Read the Steed. Honestly, Pat getting ejected was the real turning point. The turning point as far as the comeback. Yeah, Jay from the land of Hella. Didn't they do the same exact thing against Memphis? They did. Exact same thing. And they were playing whoop that trick at the Memphis Arena FedEx Forum. And if you remember, and Draymond's already addressed this in the postgame press conference, Draymond famously dancing and waving a towel on that night as the whole crowd in Memphis. And I covered that Game 5 as well as this one. And I remember it vividly. And the Warriors went home, and it was a grind in Game 6. They won Game 6, but Game 6 was a lot like Game 3 and Game 4 of this series. They had to grind it, and I think they were in a better place at that point, more dominant. I think the Grizzlies had more skill, I think, than this Rockets team, but the Warriors are a little bit older, but they had to sweat it out a little bit in that game down the stretch. Ultimately, they got the job done, and look, as long as the Warriors get the job done Friday, then tonight becomes completely irrelevant, although it does take a toll in terms of now you're not going to have as much rest potentially going into the next series. The Rockets or the Timberwolves series against the Lakers will also have a role in that. But again, I don't think this team is, they're not at a point with the way they're constructed and the overall age. I feel like they're not at a point where they can just go all in, as I'm saying. They don't dictate every term of how everything is going to play out, every single night. As I said to the caller, it's not 2017-18. It's not as simple as we want to win now, so we're just going to win. Like, you can put yourself in position to win, but this is a very, 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 I think different team from a lot of those teams, just in terms of the margin for error. Playoff knees, Bees knees. Dubs won 1-3-4-6 against the Grizz in 2022 also. Yes, they did. They won Game 1 close, lost Game 2 close, won Game 3 and 4, got blown out by a much higher margin, although the bench guys in that game won the fourth quarter by a similar margin. Warriors were down 51, I believe, at the end of the third quarter that night, and they ended up losing by 39. And I think I had the box score up earlier, and I put it away. Actually, I have the box score up. The Warriors won the fourth quarter of that one 28-15. They won the fourth quarter of this one, and the Lakers are coming back a little bit, but they won the fourth quarter of this one tonight 36-24. So very similar margins in the fourth quarter, but the Warriors only lose this one by 15 because they were only down by 27, not 51. So as bad as this one was at times, that one was a lot worse on that night in Memphis, which also was a Wednesday night. I think it was May the 11th. May the 10th, May the 11th, back in 2022. All right, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Let's get a couple of more here in the YouTube chat, the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open, and we can get to some calls here. We do have a couple of lines open if you want to jump in and join the conversation here. JD, does Kerr lay into the starters for playing without energy? No, I don't think he does. Again, I would almost guarantee you they had a conversation about, hey, let's play this thing out, go for it. Again, I think there's a conversation to be had potentially about how hard they went at the beginning. I mean, they were not. I mean, it was 8-5, and then it was just, I mean, they were settling for threes. They were not attacking in any form or fashion. The defensive resistance was non-existent. A lot of times when you're a step slow, you're fouling. A lot of people complaining about the officiating in the first quarter. Sure, could 13 free throw attempts been 8? Probably, but that didn't. That wouldn't have mattered. The Warriors did nothing to attempt to draw a foul. No drives to the basket. No forceful play. They played without any force in the first quarter. That's something where I think Steve Kerr could maybe not get into them, but I think they had a plan going in that if this thing went awry, they were just going to hit the eject button and head toward Friday. JC Mack, Dubs were playing too loose and to lose in the first quarter. I agree. Regulator. This reminds me of the Spurs when they got blown out. Popovich sat the starters and let that game go. For an older team, I do think you have to manage it a little bit more in that way. But all of that being said, I'm still kind of stunned that it was as bad as it was, as early as it was, and the tap out was just right there and ready to be had. All right, let's do one more, and we're going to take – actually, no, we got a break. Let's break. 808 KNBR. Yeah, 415-808-5627. And we got Kyle Haar back at our San Francisco studios. Thomas and Gilroy, we're going to get to you coming back. Couple of lines open, more from the chat. Sounds of Dubs OT. We've got another hour to come right here on 104.5 and 680 The Sports Leader.
Live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
So Ahmed Thompson to the line. Houston is now 7 of 7 at the free throw line. Steve Kerr said something interesting to us when we sat with him before the game. He's very cognizant of what the schedule looks like for the last 3 potential games of this series. Only 1 day off in between. He said, look, very little rest, cross-country flights. I've got an older team. We'll see how this thing goes tonight early. See how long we can potentially chase it. Golden State right now playing in an early hole.
And the hole would get deeper for the Warriors. That was Spiro Ditas on the TNT broadcast. Warriors lose this one 131-116. We're back here on Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR. 808 KNBR, Thomas and Gilroy coming up here in just a second. Yeah, you can't not be cognizant of that. To be perfectly honest. And it was something we talked about in the preview for this series, the fact that the Warriors were going to get 4 days before game 1. They were going to get 2 days in between 1 and 2. They were going to get 2 more between 2 and 3. And then it was going to be every other day from there and every other day plus travel from game 4 on until the end of the series. And now we're about to hit the third step of that with the flight to Houston and then the flight back from Houston. And then the Warriors obviously hoping that they don't have to make a return flight to Houston for a third time to play potentially an afternoon game on Sunday in game 7. So it all factors in terms of how long you try to chase a game. I thought the Warriors chased it through halftime, and we'll hear in Sounds of Dubs OT, which is going to come up at 8:30, the conversation that Steve had with Draymond at halftime about just how long he was going to let it go to see if the starters could get back into the game, coming out down by 27 at the beginning of the quarter. It's on point and aligned with everything we're talking about here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Let's get back to the phones with Thomas in Gilroy here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, JD. How you doing? Thanks for taking the call.
You got it.
I'm going to go the other direction a little bit. I'm angry too, or upset, but not because the Warriors laid an egg tonight. It is what it is. It was a game where we had the number 2 seed backed into a corner. These are professional athletes that have a lot of pride. They don't want to be embarrassed losing to a lower seed. They're fighting for their lives. They came out smoking hot. Red Van Vliet is a former champion. He's hotter than he's been all season. Sengun is the real deal. He's an absolute baller. Yeah, Brooks is a pain in the butt, but he is what he is. They're the number 2 seed for a reason. We laid an egg tonight, but just constantly hearing people call in, jumping on and off the bandwagon. Kerr should do this. Kerr should do that. It's just be a fan, root for the team. We fought all year just to get to the dance. We're at the dance. We're playing the number 2 seed. We're going to take them out in game 5. If it doesn't work out in game 5, we're going to take them out in game 6. But calling in after every loss and text, you said you got texts talking about basically questioning their motivation, their courage. I don't know what the term you used. Basically,
yeah, gutless. People saying it was a gutless effort tonight, which is a joking. Yeah. That's kind of a joking regular season term. I to pull that out in the playoffs, it'd have to be pretty bad considering these circumstances. To me, gutless would have been, you're down 3-1 and you just completely lay down and get beat by 40 like that, and your season's over. Like that would have been. So it doesn't apply tonight. But I was surprised, though. I will say this. I was surprised at how little fight they had tonight. I get it. Once it gets to a point of no return, you do have to be cautious of the schedule and all of those things. I get it. We talked about it before the series started, that the longer this goes, the more it levels the field for the Rockets in a big way. And, yeah, the Rockets were a 52-win team over the course of the season. I get it. Warrior fans don't like them. But they have done, a lot in the regular season to earn their spot, and it's on the Warriors to beat them.
Yeah, I agree, and And my biggest fear too, going into the series, is you don't want to stretch out 5-6 because these guys are young, they're athletic, they're hungry. They don't have respect for the Warriors' rings, so the Warriors are going to have to go out and beat them and teach them respect, and they will. My problem is people calling after these are human beings too. At the end of the day, this game started off, Warriors were cold. It seems like the Rockets were into the bonus almost immediately. Like
they were 4 minutes in, basically.
Yeah, when you start off like that, and then you get the home crowd into it, and you got, like I said, you got professional athletes, love them or hate them. They got pride. They're backed into a corner. They're going to give you everything. They don't want to be embarrassed. They might not have that. They're not going to have that same momentum in Golden State if they fall behind early. The Warriors are going to they're going to handle their business. And yeah, in a perfect world, they handle it earlier. They get more rest for their guys. But they're at their dance, man. They're playing with house money. They're going to beat the number 2 seed, and just stop jumping on and off the bagwagon is my point. It's like, be a fan, but don't think for a second you have more knowledge. You know more than Steve Kerr. These guys, we're blessed in the Bay Area to have experienced what we've experienced with the Warriors. So either be a fan or don't, or go get yourself a shiny new Cleveland Cavaliers bumper sticker for your car if this doesn't work out. But just root for your team.
Thomas.
Stop acting like you know more.
Appreciate the call, Thomas. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. As the Warriors, lose this one. I'll take a quick sip here, not of soda tonight. No brews here at in Houston. Quick sip there, so I don't start coughing up a lung here on the microphone. That's not good for anybody. But the Warriors do lose this one by that final of 131 to 116. Game 6 to be played. A few people were asking what time Game 6 is going to be. The time is to be determined based on how many games there are on Friday night. And right now, you look at where things sit, there could be as many as it basically, I think, depends on the Lakers game at this point, and whether they're playing as well on Tuesday, or on Friday night. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, if the All right, we're back. All right, let's try it again. We're back here from Houston. 808 KNBR. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Warriors lose at 131 to 116. Yeah, the game on Friday, we were talking about that. If it's the only game, meaning the Timberwolves win, it'll be at 6 o'clock because it'll be the only game on the schedule in the NBA on Friday night. If the Lakers come back and win, then the Timberwolves and Lakers are going to play Game 6. That game's at 4:30. That would knock the Warrior game down to the normal slot, which is 7 o'clock. And so so it could be either 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And then we're also going to get some information tonight after the Laker game, depending upon how that plays out, as to what would be coming up on Sunday if the Warriors are able to win the game against the Rockets and close out the series coming up on Friday, as it leads into the weekend. And game one has the potential to be on Sunday in the afternoon. And so, yeah, the Warriors will go home, and then it could be home Friday and then right back potentially to Minnesota. Obviously, if the Lakers win tonight and win on Friday, then the Lakers and Timberwolves would play Game 7. And then the Warriors series against the Timberwolves at that point would be played on Tuesday, and then they would go every other day, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from that point moving forward. So, yeah, for those that were asking about the time of the game, that was the latest on that. And just keeping an update on the Lakers and Timberwolves, it's a 53-43 advantage for the Timberwolves as they're approaching late first half action down at crypto.com arena. The Timberwolves are looking good. Dig on 117. Minnesota looking like they're trying to close this thing out. Yeah, absolutely. The Timberwolves are looking good early, withstanding a couple of Laker runs to build that lead back up. So let's get some more in the chat here for a little bit. On Dubs OT, another installment of Kyle's Clicks. Following this one, your frustrations on this one, your confidence level for Game 6. Regulator, I'm not upset. The fourth was actually entertaining. The fourth quarter was entertaining. I mean, I gave those guys a shout-out, and I think they definitely deserve it. But the 5-player group of Pat Spencer, Moses Moody, Braxton Key, Kevin Knox, and TJD, the 5-player group there did an unbelievable job of just competing and making Ime Udoka keep their starters on the court all the way up until the 2-minute mark. And it was starting to get serious. We were joking about the Braxton Key layups. If he makes a couple, TJD makes one, it might have truly been a 7-point game with about 6 or 7 minutes left. And then there's questions as to, if you're Steve Kerr, do you bring the starters back in the game? I know that was one other little gripe that I saw floating around on social media. At what point? I don't think there was ever a point where it even became a question as to whether you bring the starters back in. I think it would have had to have gotten almost down to like a two possession game with 4 or 5 minutes left to be able to think about doing that. I do think Kerr would have done it, but again, I think it had to be 5 to 7, I think, with about 3 to 4 minutes left, and it never quite got to that point, in part because Pat Spencer got himself ejected from the game for tossing Dylan Brooks after the play, and then the ensuing back and forth between Trace Jackson Davis and Alperen Sengun, as Sengun tried to take up for Brooks, and TJD. TJD almost baited Sengun into maybe doing something. And again, you just never know with the Rockets. If somebody is going to, pop off and throw a haymaker. Like it just like almost any point. And it did make the final few minutes, even as Spencer was ejected, it made it a lot more interesting, to be sure, to be able to watch. Florida Dubs fan, at least right now, I still feel like the Rockets cannot beat us 3 games in a row. Okay, that's a different little spin on it from Florida Dubs fan. A little different, I think, when you have the 3-1 lead, but you're the team that's going on the road. It's interesting. I couldn't remember, and the great Raymond Ritter of the Warriors PR department, we were having a casual conversation as he came up to kind of check on everybody at Toyota Center. And we were just kind of talking about Game 5. And I said, man, I can't in the last – my memory's pretty good, going back to when I was a kid, and even as far back as, say, 30 years ago, the amount of times that a team up 3-1 in a series, 7-game series, amount of times a team's up 3-1 and is going on the road, which I would think happens pretty rarely because that's the underdog team that would be in that position to do it, the position that the Warriors are currently. But I couldn't even really think of instances. I think Jimmy Butler's Heat did it one year in Milwaukee recently, Game 5 on the road, up 3-1 to close out the series. But I just can't recall it happening really hardly at all. And so we were talking about it. And then Raymond, because he's the best in the business at what he does, he sends me a text about 5 minutes later, and he got the number. So the record for teams in 7-game series all time, this is the all-time record, 7-game series, playing Game 5 on the road when up 3-1. So the exact position the Warriors are in, 30-68, now 30-69 with the Warriors loss. So about a 30-31% winning percentage. I actually am surprised it's even that high. I'm surprised it's even that high. Where it's basically kind of 1 out of every 3. I thought it would have been half that, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen a lot. But yeah, I do think that's one thing to hang on to. Again, the things that give you confidence, if you're a Warriors fan, the things that give you confidence are the simple fact that the Warriors still have the 2 best players in the series in terms of star power in Steph Curry and in Jimmy Butler. They're going home for Game 6, and they still have the advantage in close games, which is what they've won 3 of in this series at this particular point. Where you might be concerned is now the back and forth and the question, I'm not saying they've done it, but have the Rockets figured something out here in these last 3 games that kind of translates to things that they can do, whether it's the 2 big lineup, whether it's the zone, whether it's the ability to find offense and a little bit more fluidly than they had been early in the series? I saw a lot of social media. This was a fake shooting game. The games that the Rockets hit were kind of the fake shooting game where guys that don't hit shots typically or over the long haul were hitting shots. I know we had a text, the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line that sort of addressed that as well. 408, I doubt the Rockets shoot as well as they did tonight on Friday, and I doubt Steph shoots as bad as he did tonight. That's 2 games in a row for Steph. And, that's something that I also think in a way actually benefits the Warriors because, how often do you see Steph really struggle at that level repeatedly, 2, 3, 4 games in a row? Like one of these games, he's got to be exploding again, kind of like he did in Game 3. One of these last 2, you would figure. If not, then obviously it puts the Warriors in a danger zone to have to kind of win a Game 6 or a Game 7 the way that they won Game 4. And that means you're going to have a massive, massive output from Jimmy Butler and a couple of others. It was Steph and the others in Game 3 because Jimmy Butler couldn't go. It was Jimmy Butler and Podziemski and the others because Steph was having an off game. But yeah, Steph with 13, and there was a lot of discussion about the fouls early in the game. We'll hear what Steph had to say about that coming up in about 10 minutes here on our Sounds of Dubs OT. But it also, I'll say this, Moses Moody's got to play. Moses Moody got to get back in there. I know this sounds like a regular season conversation from like 2 years ago in December, but Moses Moody has found his way out of the starting lineup, and they went to Buddy Hield for the game on Monday, and Moody went out for Quentin Post when they didn't have Jimmy Butler, and they threw Kuminga in there. I think Moody is a player that shouldn't be dismissed, and I think that's another benefit of the way the game ended tonight. and Moody ended up with 25, and he was rebounding, and he was making stuff happen. He was getting putbacks. Like I think Moody can't go from being somebody that's clear cut in your rotation as a starter right now to out of the rotation because of matchups. Maybe you don't start him. Kerr's going to have a decision to make, I think, and I would guess he starts Buddy again in Game 6 at home and goes with the 3-guard group. But Moody's got to play. Like, Moody has to be out there. Tonight was not a great Quentin Post night. Tonight, Pajemski's going to play. Steph, obviously, Draymond, Jimmy. You're going to give Buddy a shot. You're going to give Peyton a look, and Peyton only played 10 minutes, so he should be fresh. Moody, to me, is the one guy that the last couple of games has not performed, but has also fallen a little bit out of favor, that I think the Warriors should look to play him. Alpha, do you think Spencer should replace Moody in the rotation Friday? I feel like the Warriors have to make one adjustment to close it out. I don't think it should be Moody. I mean, Moody was playing as well as Pat Spencer was tonight in that fourth quarter that everybody watched. I said after Game 2 that you could put Pat Spencer in the rotation. So I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe it does if you're trying to get Steph a little bit of a rest. Again, the circumstances by which Pat Spencer has to play, I think, are important. When you're not expecting him to come in or you've got a big lead, is he able to be more successful? Then all of a sudden he's in the game at the top of the second quarter when it's tied and the Rockets have kind of planned out how they want to go about attacking him in that moment where the game really matters. Like, you could find yourself being, Pat Spencer exposed, I think, relatively quickly at that particular point in time. So, but Moody's the one guy that I think, I know the length and the quickness, and sometimes Moody being a little bit of a tweener can be somewhat problematic, but I think Moses Moody should still be able to get in the mid 20s in terms of minutes, even with Jimmy Butler doing his thing, even with, obviously, Buddy Hield getting an opportunity. And I still think the leash should be shorter for Buddy, to be perfectly honest. Like, if he's hitting shots, like I think the Warriors tonight, and again, you're always careful to kind of wonder what you kind of wonder if I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to hold off on it. Let's get a couple more in the chat here on Dubs OT. Robert Brown, I think too many people think Friday is some lock. I'm kind of with you. Like, the Warriors should be favored. I would pick them to win the game. I would bet them to win the game. Certainly wouldn't bet against them. But Friday is not, like, they're going to have to play well. They're going to have to play well to win that game. Let's get another one here, and we'll get back to the Buddy Hield point. Playoff knees. Warriors are now 2-6 in road Game 5s. Yeah, Game 5s are tough. Game 5s are tough. The Warriors, I'm surprised they've played that many road Game 5s. Is that in the last decade, or is that all time? I'm gonna have to try and look that one up. I think the Warriors overgassed themselves a little bit on Buddy. That's kind of what I was going to say. Like, he almost became, like, you never truly can fully count on Buddy. And I'm not saying he was. I mean, Steph was bad, Jimmy was bad. I mean, I was looking at the box score. I mean, Jimmy 8 points, 2 for 10. Like, Jimmy Butler didn't have it, and to have him only play 25 minutes tonight, I think that's probably a good thing. But I do think the Warriors got a little high on the Buddy Hield supply. Is the way that I'll say it. Off of the way that he played, and again, excellent. Everybody loves Buddy. We get it. Him and Jimmy have a thing, but I think you got to be careful as it relates to Buddy Hield. He should play. Max Lopez, wow, I didn't realize J.K. didn't play tonight. There was some confusion on that. Jonathan Kuminga came up with an illness about 90 minutes to 2 hours before the game. He was on the injury report and was ruled out due to illness. So Jonathan Kuminga was not available tonight. For those that hadn't heard it, it wasn't Kerr just didn't play him and then didn't play him in mop-up time in the fourth quarter. Kuminga was sick, so I don't know if he ate some of the bad Brandon Pajemski sushi in Houston or what it was, but Kuminga was not available to play. Reed the Steed, Curry looked gassed. Jay from the land of Hella, sushi. Yeah, no Jonathan Kuminga. Officially, he was out ill in this one. So no, there's no furthering of any kind of beef or feud between Kuminga and Steve Kerr or anything like that. It wasn't, wow, the Warriors are getting smoked and Kuminga it was just, and Kerr still didn't play Kuminga. Oh my God, like none of that was part of the deal there. Darren Brazil, if the Rockets don't shoot 60%, Warriors more than likely win this game. I'm not going to go that far. I mean, I'm not going to go that far tonight, although the Warriors did have the ability to come back. And again, both the games in this building in Houston and Toyota Center, the Warriors did show an ability to come back oddly and kind of half make it a game when it looked like they were completely cooked, which again, I think that and the competitive spirit of the young guys, I think that's something that could benefit the Warriors moving forward. All right, let's take a timeout. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Warriors lose this one 131-116. We'll get to our Sounds of Dubs OT. More from the chat, and we can sneak in some calls between now and 9 o'clock right here on 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
KNBR presents the sounds of Dubs OT.
I can see the headline now. Kerr says Warriors better without Curry.
No class, no ball.
I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court.
Now here's John Dickinson.
All right, we're back here. Sounds of Dubs OT. Warriors lose 131-116 in Houston. So the series advantage for the Warriors now is 3-2. Game 6 at Chase on Friday night. If the Lakers win tonight, that game will be at 7 o'clock. If the Lakers don't win tonight, that game's going to be at 6 o'clock inside Chase Center, and then we'll see what happens from there as far as should the Warriors win that one to advance. By the way, Lakers down 59-49 at the half to the Timberwolves in Southern California. So the Lakers have some work to do, or they're going to be going home in 5 tonight, which I don't think is something that anybody had on their bingo card. Maybe losing the series, but losing in 5. The Timberwolves have been the better team, to be sure, to this point in that series. All right, let's run through it. A couple of Steve Kerr, a couple of Draymond. We'll also hear from Jimmy Butler and from Stephen Curry from downstairs at Toyota Center following the Warriors' blowout loss. Let's hear first from the head coach and the fact that the Warriors bench did a number, forcing the Rockets to put their starters back in.
Loved our bench group. They came in, they forced Houston to bring their starters back in. They set a tone that we're going to need for game 6. And I thought, even though we lost the game, I thought it was crucial that we fought the way we did in the fourth quarter.
I'm with Steve on that. I've said it throughout the 90 minutes or so that we've been on the air and on YouTube. I do think that there's an energy from what the bench guys were able to do that helps ignite the lead up to game 6, where the Warriors are going to have to be juiced and understanding what the Rockets are capable of, but also just this game needed a little bit more. This was by far, up until that point, the least testy of the 5 games, by far. The Rockets were just kind of doing their thing. The Warriors were not putting up much resistance. It was turned into a blowout. Even the crowd before the game, the 6:30 start locally in Houston, 4:30 back in the Bay, the building was half full at tip-off. I mean, it was half full. And the folks that got here when they got here were almost surprised. It really didn't fill up till like the end of the first quarter. And the Rockets were cruising at that point. Great first quarter, 40-point quarter, all of that. And it was almost as if the fans were like pleasantly surprised, like, oh, this is pretty cool. Kicking butt. And then they got in it, but they were not in it from the jump like they were game 1, game 2. If that had happened in game 1 or game 2 with the 8:30 starts and everybody here, they would have blown the roof off the place. But that wasn't the case tonight with the 6:30 start. And so this game lacked juice. It really did. It felt kind of like a regular season game, to be perfectly honest, and not a playoff game. And I think the Warriors kind of played it like that. But then you get the fourth quarter and the force and the vigor that the bench guys were able to play with and they then get chippy with the Stars. Like, it was great. It was just it gave a little life to a game with the way that the oomph that they played with here down the stretch there, even in a loss that I think translates moving forward. All right, continuing on here on Sounds of Dubs OT. From one Kerr, we go to a second Steve Kerr. He addressed some of the fouls, and in particular the high five foul, where if you hit a guy and you high five him in the shooting motion, it's not a foul. Steve Kerr choosing tonight, interestingly enough, as a night to say maybe that rule should be changed.
You know, the rule, the NBA is once the shot has been released, you're allowed to hit the guy's arm. And so what's happened in the league this year is players always they're going to outsmart, the rules. They know what they're doing. So players all over the league are just taking shots at guys' shooting hands after release because they know it's not going to be a foul. And I'm very confident that next year the league will fix it because it's only a matter of time before somebody, breaks a thumb or breaks a hand or whatever. But these are the rules. I do believe they're allowed to call a flagrant if they want. The refs could call a flagrant if the guy winds up and takes a shot. But no, it's been happening across the league all year long. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but we have to take it through the league process to get that changed, and that'll probably happen this summer, I would guess.
And Steve Kerr has been somebody, just for a little bit of background there, that has been listened to on issues in the past. I mean, I don't recall a formal competition committee type deal like the NFL has, but I do think there is some level of that in the NBA, and Steve Kerr's been somebody whose suggestion has been looked at, and there were a lot of suggestions league-wide looked at from last year, really even the middle of last year to the end, and then in the offseason about allowing more physicality actually defensively than had been allowed before. Too many fouls, too much foul baiting. There still is a lot of foul baiting throughout the league, but I think less than there was a year ago or a year and a half ago, which I think is a good thing. And Steve Kerr was kind of at the forefront of all of that. And yeah, as a few people in the chat are saying, yeah, it's up to ref interpretation as to whether they're going to call that or not. And they have not been calling it league wide. They certainly have not been calling it on some of the plays where Steph Curry has been the player who's gotten hit. All right, here is Draymond Green. We've talked a lot tonight about the loss tonight. Does it remind you of the Game 5 in Memphis in 2022? That was in the Western semifinals, so round 2. Here is what Draymond had to say when asked about this game, reminding him of that one.
They weren't playing with that trick, but they may as well have been. But, yeah, I mean, at this point in our careers, we've seen it all, had all the experiences, so you got something to draw back on. But, yeah, they played a good game. But whether they win by 1 or 50, it's a playoff series. It counts as one win.
It certainly does. And the Warriors still with the 3-2 advantage. But, yeah, that I will forever have that image, and it was floating around tonight, of the entire Grizzlies arena and Draymond just dancing and waving a towel and embracing it as the Warriors are just getting embarrassed. I mean, worse than it was tonight by that Grizzlies team. 51, I think, at one point, and then it ended up 39. But the Warriors did come back in that series in Game 6 at Chase Center and close it out. And as we had in the chat earlier, it was the Warriors winning Game 1, 3, 4, and 6 of that series to advance then to the Western Conference Finals. All right, let's get another Draymond Green clip here. And Draymond this time weighing in on a question regarding Steph's hands and the thumb, if he thinks the Rockets are targeting that thumb.
Yeah, I noticed it. I think it's pretty obvious, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Do you think the league should crack down on it at all?
I'm not one to come to cry to you about what the league should do. I see enough people cry about me, and I lose respect for those people when they cry about me, so I would not allow somebody to lose respect for me over that. It's all good.
All right, so there you go. Short and sweet from Draymond on that, but he did say he noticed it. Look, that's part of playoff basketball. If there is a known injury, and you can call it dirty, you can call it whatever the heck you want, but if there is a known injury, teams are going to attack that injury. And especially when it is the kind of injury that can be easily attacked with a swipe, with what can be perceived as a play on the ball there. And so Robert Brown saying in the chat, good answer from Draymond. And yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less from Draymond Green as it relates to that, and wanting to keep it level in terms of some of the guys that he's complained about. They're complaining and not wanting to be one of those guys. All right, couple more here on our sounds at Dubs OT. Warriors lose to the Rockets 131-116. Let's hear from Jimmy Butler. I see the clip here, and I think is Jimmy singing everything gonna be all right? Is he? No, but Jimmy post game says the Warriors are going to be all right.
We're fine. Our confidence isn't going to waver any. We're going to start out better. We're going to play a better overall game because we know how good of a team we are as a unit. We know how good our players are as individuals. So we just got to, as starters, we got to kick us off better, which we know that we will do. We'll be fine.
All right, so yeah, Jimmy Butler not concerned about it. I don't think there's anything that's happened to this point in this series, and certainly not tonight, even though the Rockets dominated the game up until the fourth quarter from the mop-up guys, the back end of the roster players. I don't think there's anything that's happened in this series where the Warriors would have lost confidence. Like that's not even like they are confident. They believe they're the better team. They believe they have the best two players. They believe they have the veteran experience. And they believe that they're going to go out Friday and close it out. Like there is nothing. Like if the Warriors do lose the series, it's not going to be because the Warriors became unconfident. That I'm completely 100% sure of. From the land of Hella, Jay, the mind game of Udoka having to put the starters back in and still getting pushed. Yeah, that was some. Again, I don't think that was nothing. When you lose the game, does it? I mean, it's not like you hope you're not ever obviously in that situation again. But to me, when you lose the game, typically, not speaking specifically to tonight, I don't really think there's a lot of translatable stuff from one game to the next. But kind of similarly to game two, where the Warriors were just getting roasted, and then you'd look up and it was an 11-point game. You're like, how is it an 11-point game? How is it like that they could steal this game even without Jimmy Butler? They could potentially steal this game. Going back to game two, it did oddly, even though they were down 31 at one point and 27 or whatever it was in the start of the fourth quarter. It did oddly is like, damn, it's already down to 17 and there's still like 10 minutes left. It's down to I think they got it as close as 11, I think, or 12 maybe at one point. 12 or 13, and then there's still 7 minutes left. Like at that point, it was like, damn, you really could make this thing uncomfortable. And I think a couple of layups away were the Warriors from doing it in that particular situation. All right, let's continue here with our final clip. Let's get a little Steph Curry post game, and he touched on what became one of the storylines of the night here, interestingly enough, which is the conversation about Dillon Brooks specifically, and players like Dillon Brooks fouling him after he shoots, which again, as we heard from Steve Kerr, is not something currently that's against the rules and is up to the officials' judgment.
There's a pattern of like when is full extension, when it like what's the full point of release, because it's hard for a ref. I get it. You're trying to look at the body, look at the release, where contact is. There's a subtle difference in how certain people do it. That when I say if it's a foul, it's a foul. But other than that, as a player, you can't worry about it too much, because whether you get the call or not, if you complain or you can complain. If you dwell on it and get distracted by it, then you're not worried about making shots. So I'm trying to do both, make shots, and if I get fouled, like let them know I got fouled. So that's all.
And there were a couple of more plays tonight where Steph was letting them know, by the way, which has been something that's been a regular occurrence in this series. And again, I don't think it's going to be something that's going away in the lead up to Game 6 or in Game 6 with all the chips being moved here to the table for the Warriors as it relates to being able to try and finish off this series at Chase Center on Friday night. All right, let's go ahead and do our fun with numbers. Let's do fun with numbers right now, and then we'll wrap it up here over the final 10 minutes or so with Kyle's clicks. And Kyle, let me give me an out time to make sure we can get all the spots in at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. When you get a chance, you can just text it to me. But let's do fun with numbers.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, Warriors lose this one 131-116. It's a 3-2 lead for the Dubs. Warriors overall it now 19-9 against Houston and 6-8 on the road, all time in the playoffs going back through the last decade here. The Warriors had won the last 4 Game 5s prior to tonight. So they are 16-5 in Game 5s since 2015, even with the loss, typically a pivot point, but 0-2 are the Warriors in the Game 5s, as we noted, when they're up 3-1 going on the road. And that was another note that we mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the fact that now teams with a 3-1 lead going on the road all time, now 30-69. So 30-69, you do the math on that. That is about a 30%, basically, little above 30% amount of the time that they win, 30.3% of the time those teams are able to get the job done and win. The Warriors bench scored 76 points tonight, most points scored by reserves in any playoff game in franchise history. The second most was 71. That was on May 9th of 2016, and that was a game where Steph Curry scored 30-something off the bench because it was Game 4 of a playoff series, and he came off the bench because he was coming back from an injury and absolutely went off. That was the I'm back Steph Curry game in Portland for the Warriors to take a 3-1 series lead. I want to say Curry had 37, and they were, I think, 37, maybe all in the second half or something like that, and overtime. But he was on one, and then the next day went and got his unanimous MVP. It was announced his unanimous MVP the next day after he had the I'm back in Portland game. That also, again, interestingly enough, the prior high. But yeah, Steph had basically half of the 71 on that night in May of 2016 up in Portland. The last time any team's reserves had 76 in a playoff game was in the bubble, and it was Toronto. The bench scored 100 in a bubble game back in August of 2020. The Rockets put up 131. This was both teams' most points in a game in this first round series. The Warriors' prior high was 109 from Game 4. The Rockets was 109 in Game 2, so both teams getting significantly beyond that. And I think both teams, again, the scoring has gone up in this series, which is actually kind of surprising considering where it, I guess maybe not considering where it started, but it is kind of surprising considering the way that both of these teams, typically you would think two really good defensive teams, as the series goes on, it might get even uglier and lower scoring, and maybe we're still set to see that here coming up in the next 2 games. But it's oddly gone in the other direction. Like often you'll see teams that score a lot will score less as series go on in the playoffs because everybody kind of knows what everybody's running. It's interesting to see that the opposite has been true in this series. And you look at the notes, Warriors take another L with Jimmy Butler, 27-10 overall in the regular season and playoffs with games with Jimmy Butler, 26-9 when he's in the lineup. He missed, obviously, a game in the regular season and Game 3 of this series, and Game 6 to be played on Friday in San Francisco. Again, taking a quick look at the NBA scoreboard, and Minnesota's up 5 midway through quarter number 3 in LA. If Minnesota wins that game, the game's going to be at 6 on Friday night. If the Lakers come back and win that game, the game's going to be at 7 on Friday night, down at or over at Chase Center with the Lakers and Timberwolves playing in Minneapolis. So that's going to be our sounds of Dubs OT and fun with numbers for tonight. Let's wrap it up here in the final 5 minutes with Kyle's Clicks. Kyle, what do we got here back in the YouTube chat? Robert Brown, JD, is Toyota Center a nice arena? It's nice. I would say it's a middle of the pack arena. It's probably about 20 years old. It's a little bit newer. I think it was kind of 2004-ish when it opened, 2003, 2004-ish, if memory serves. So it's about 20 years old. It's nice. It's big. Some inside feel cavernous. Some you feel on top of the action. You feel a little bit farther removed from the action, I think, in the upper bowl. But no, it's very nice club bar area. Close here that I obviously cannot. It's not like at Harmonic when you go on the road. It's not like Harmonic, but it's nice. No, it's a nice building, and the fans have been into it more so the first 2 games than tonight. But the one thing if they got to play Game 7, they're going to be freaking into it for Game 7. San Jose Jazz fan 4, Pat's head had incidental contact with Sengun's face. That's pretty funny. San Jose Jazz fan 4. And also, I think it was Robert Brown or Andis Brown. I think it said no Pat Spencer. It got a bone to pick with you, Kyle. No Pat Spencer sound. No Pat Spencer sound and sounds at Dubs OT tonight. I'm gonna no judgment, but you're gonna have to explain yourself on that one.
So there was Draymond sound that, and Jacob was doing his best. He was still cutting so much sound that we got. And but we weren't able to get the Draymond calling, the Pat Spencer ejection. Beautiful. He called it beautiful.
He called it beautiful.
Yeah.
He called it beautiful. And that may or may not need to be something that we include in our show close now. I think I know we're getting toward the end of the season. They're getting extremely long. Maybe not tonight. I don't know if we can add it tonight. We can add it tonight. I mean, we probably can't add it tonight because we've only got about 3 minutes left. And Kyle, I'm under strict orders here. Plus, we're going to let everybody go watch the fourth quarter of the Laker Minnesota game and figure out what the heck is coming up. So that's all going to be coming up here in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's get a couple more in the chat. Digum117. The other thing is no one thought this team would be in this position in January. That's a great point. And I do think that is something that should be mentioned on a night like tonight. I still don't think it changes the fact that if the Warriors lose the series from up 3-1, even without home court advantage, it won't be a major disappointment. It will be a major disappointment for the Warriors with their experience level to be up 3-1 and not win this series. If it happens, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be disappointing. Rebel to Sounds, the Warriors will not be going to Houston until next season. Yeah, they had 3 games in the regular season here in Houston, by the way, because remember they had the in-season tournament game and they lost that one, and that caused them to play the Rockets 5 times, 3 at Toyota Center, and now 3 more in the playoffs. So they've played here 6 times. They don't want a 7th in Game 7, Rebel. All right, 2 more. Let's do Ian Johnson. If you have eyes on a deep playoff run, you need to handle business. Couldn't agree more. All right, let's get our final chat here on Dubs OT.
Now, time for the Dubs OT comment of the night.
Read the Steed. I think we need to distinguish TJD from bearded TJD, 2 different players. Yeah, bearded TJD wants all the freaking smoke and is a dog with a bunch of W's. DAWWWWG. And Digum117, by the way, that's a great comment. Read the Steed. A few people, why did Pat Spencer get ejected for tossing Brooks? They called that a technical or a hostile act to where he could be run just for that because it was after the play.
I thought it was the headbutt. Well, was it not the headbutt?
I thought it was or maybe it was maybe. Oh, you know what? It might have been. I think you're right. I think it was the first technical was the toss, and then he got another technical for Sengun. So he ended up it was two separate incidents basically in the same incident. Kyle, that's a good call there. Sometimes in the arena you don't always catch that. It was pretty loud, but no, you are correct. It was two separate incidents. All right, Kyle, that's going to do it. We will be back again. It's going to be YouTube only on Friday from Harmonic and Thrive City. Kyle Haar will be he'll be somewhere. I don't know if he's going to be in studio. We're going to try to take some calls on that. We'll figure it out, but it's going to be a chat. It's going to be for the chat on Friday. We've been doing some big numbers, especially after a lot of these wins. So we're back at it from Harmonic on Friday for Kyle and Jacob and anybody else I forgot. Kyle Chung's plus minus, which wasn't great tonight, not going to lie. It's rare.
Although, what would be the kind of guy that you throw in to late in the fourth quarter and he's throwing his body around. He's cutting down into that lead.
Kyle Chung is very Pat Spencer-ish. He really is. He doesn't mess around when he gets his opportunity. So everybody in the chat, enjoy the end of the Lakers and the Timberwolves, and we'll reconvene on Friday night right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no, no.
Big audio quality show.
You are a sicko, and I appreciate you for it because I'm a sicko.
I just know they kicked our ass tonight.
No class, no balls.
Everything's gonna be all right.